Today I'm tying a swing fly. I call it the low water leech. I developed this probably about 15 years ago for fishing low clear water, which the Pure Marquette River is known to have. I tie this fly on a 2461 Daiichi hook, very sharp hook, very light wire. And you can also tie it bigger on a shank fly, which I will show you too. It's a pretty simple fly. It doesn't take too much material. We use some black Marabou. The body is tied with ice dub peacock. And then for the little bit of flash, I like to use this pearl fringe and also just a little bit of red flashabou. But it's pretty simple, pretty sparse fly, so it'll sink fast. If you notice on a lot of my flies, I do not put any weight on them. I had problems in the past where I would tie a lot of flies with weight on them, and then we would have no rain and we would have no water. And the water would be so low and clear, I had all these weighted flies and I had to start all over again. So a method that I do, and I've been doing it for years, is I just slide a bullet weight down in front of the fly on the leader, and that'll get the fly down if I do need a heavier fly in different spots on the Pure Marquette River. So I will just slide this down like so. So we're basically going to start, I'm going to do just the hook style of this fly, the iron fly, I guess we'll call it, and not the shanked fly. For thread, I like to use a black, this Alter 140 thread. I use this for a lot of my flies. It's very tough, so when you need to cinch a lot of materials down, it works great for egg flies too. And you can get it in all different colors. So what we're going to do is we're going to start your thread wrap going from the front to the back. And you just want to get a good thread wrap so when you do lock your materials down, it's not going to have a tendency to spin on you. Just like so. So for the tail of this fly, we're just going to use one strand of the fringe, the pearl fringe. You could use like a thicker saltwater flashabou, or even like a pearl lateral scale would work well. Just something to give that little bit of, the light to hit it, to get that fish's attention. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of measure it, the length of the shank of the hook, and then I'm just going to bring it back. I don't want it super long like so, because then as you're casting it, it's going to have a tendency to just wrap around your hook. So I just want to go off of the length of the shank, and I'm going to tie that in. And then I'm just going to take this piece and fold it back. So it's pretty sparse, but just that little bit of flash or little bit of color will grab that fish's attention, especially, like I said, on a sunny day where this fly will fish very well in the fall. And then we're going to take the ice dub, the peacock, which is another good color that reflects light very well. And we're just going to dub it onto the thread and just palmer it to the front. We don't want to go too thick. We're going to kind of taper this, so we're going to start out thin. And then the key is when we get to the front, we want to have a little bit thicker taper towards the eye, because that's going to kind of give shoulders to the black Marabou to really make it move a lot when it's in the water. So I'm just twisting this on. You could do a dubbing loop, but this is pretty easy to do. Just do it this way. Like I've said before, my flies are all pretty simple, but they're effective. And I have to tie a lot of them. I pretty much spend my whole winter days doing this, filling up the boxes for the season. So I'm a big fan of simple and effective. So as you can see, I'm just going to kind of bulk that up towards the eye. because that's going to give me that shoulder to hold that marabou up, to really give it the movement that it needs. Just like so. Then we're going to take some black marabou. You want to get some good wispy fibers of it. You don't want these fibers to be really short. You want to have a good piece of marabou like so, because that's going to give you that movement. And what I'm going to do is I'm just kind of going to stroke it down with the fingers, and then I'm tying it in from the tip. And then I'm going to palmer it towards the eye of the hook. So you can see I tied it in and I just have it here. And on this feather, you'll notice it's very dull on the back side. We want that facing down. So the more shiny stem part is facing up. So when I'm palmering it, it's going to get that shinier part of the feather. We don't want that flat, real pale, drawn out on the back to be on top. We want it on the bottom side. So all I'm going to do is just kind of palmer this towards the front, and I kind of cinch it down a little bit, and I work it with my fingers. Just get it all fibered out. And you can even pull one side of it off and just do one side, but I like having a little bit more with the double, both sides of it. It gives that more profile and a little bit more movement. It's a little thicker. So once I get into like this part of the feather, those fibers are going to get weaker as we go, so I'm going to stop it like right about in here. And then I just take my thread, and I'm going to kind of work it in. And this is where the thicker thread comes into play, because I want to cinch that down. So when I go to cut it, it doesn't just unravel on me. Just like that. And then I'm going to pull it all back. Kind of work it back towards that shoulder of the dubbing that you made. Just like so. So you can see it's pretty sparse. There's not a lot to it, but it's pretty effective. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take another piece of this fringe, and I'm going to lay that flat right over the top of the marabou. I'm going to tie that in. Flavor out of here. And then I'm going to take a little bit of the red flashabou, and same thing. I'm not going to put a big giant clump on here. I just want like 3 or 4 strains. So the size of a matchstick. And then I'm just going to tie that on the top. We're making this for low water. We don't want it too blingy where, it might have more of a tendency to spook a fish. We want to catch that fish's eye, but we don't want to spook it either. Sometimes on the Pure Marquette, in certain conditions, too much flash can be a bad thing, I think. Especially this fall, we've had to deal with such low clear water. We really had to start thinking out of the box as far as even casting. Like, we didn't want to make a lot of big heavy spay casts this fall because I was afraid just if that bigger fly landed on the water and the line hit the water before the fly did, you might even spook fish because it was just that tough of conditions this year. Then I like to put a little collar on it, real light fly or feather, something that's kind of wispy but moves a lot in the current. Mallard flank works well. I use wood duck flank a lot, as most of you know, and then I got some really good guinea feathers from a friend of mine. So we're gonna try a little guinea hen on here. So it gives a little bit of color, you know, give it some more movement in the water. We're just gonna put that on kind of a collar. And same thing, all we're gonna do is we're just gonna bring it down, but we're gonna tie it so the top of the feather is facing up. You can look basically the same thing like the Marabou. It's kind of pale on the bottom. It's got a little more shine and color to it on the top. And we're just gonna tie that into tip first, like so. Kind of wrap it down. And we're just gonna work it forward, just like we did with the Marabou, kind of moving it with our fingers. And probably about 2 or 3 wraps, like so. And we're going to cinch it down. And then the same thing, just like the Marabou, we're going to take our fingers and kind of draw it back. And then we're just going to do some thread wraps right at the front of it. So like right now, this would even catch fish. You have kind of more of a traditional type spay fly look. What I'd like to do next though is we're gonna add in, because we fish this a lot in the fall, so we have a lot of loose, you know, salmon eggs. The steelhead come in the fall, they're focused on eating salmon eggs, and that kind of draws them up the river. So I like to use a little hot spot as far as like an egg sucking leech style, and I find it very effective in our Midwest rivers, especially in the fall. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a clump of this, and you can do any color. You could do, you know, chartreuse if you wanted. I like going still with the more pale colors or the more natural, realistic colors because I'm fishing this, like I said, in the low water where the water is much clearer. So we're going to try to, you know, match that salmon egg color at that period of time in October or November. So something in like this burnt orange will work good, or even like a yellow, like a pale yellow, or like an Oregon cheese would work well. So I just take a big clump basically of this burnt orange ice stub, and you want to get a pretty good clump. You don't want to be too bashful with this. And I've had a lot of people over the years ask me how we make these egg heads. A lot of them, I think they think we dub it, which you could do too. But what we do is we just take a big clump, almost the same way we would do like a sculpin head. So we'll get a big clump of this, and what I'm going to do, it's almost the same thing too as like making an egg fly. I'm just going to put this over the front of the hook and pinch it so it wraps all the way around, and I'm going to give it some pretty heavy duty thread wraps right in the center, like so, and then cinch it down. And then what I'm going to do, you can see there's just a lot of access of it. And I'm going to pull it up, kind of start trimming it, you know, to the size that I want to make it look egg looking. So I'm not crowding all these nice feathers that I just tied on. And then I'm just going to pull, same thing, the little bit of access I have, it'll just drop out and you can use it again for another fly. I'm going to trim it up. And then what I do is I'm going to take this and just kind of work it with my fingers and pull it all the way back. And then just trim it up. And that gives me that nice little hot spot of that natural looking salmon egg on the front of this fly. And then I'm just going to push it back some more. And that's it. And the old whip finisher, I still like using the tool. It's fast, it's effective. Just a few half hitches, pull it tight. Let's trim this up. You don't want to make it too small though. Sometimes I like it a little bulky because when this fly lands on the water and hits the current along the bank, it's going to give it kind of that little shift in the current, having that little bigger head. It'll almost make that fly kind of kick. And sometimes I think that gets their attention too, especially trout. You'll catch a lot of resident trout when you're swinging streamers and you put heads like this on them, because as soon as they hit the bank and they'll start to flutter, that current will kind of give that head a little bit of kick as that fly's getting tension on it as it's starting its swing. So there you have it. Simple but effective, the low water leech.